Hi friends, it's Becky and I wanted to share a project with you, making a bracelet with some of the beads that came in my March Curated Collections from Beads to Live By. I'm going to be using some of the 2-hole bead selections. I have these pyramid beads with this lovely yellow. These are some 2-hole beads that we'll be putting in with our bracelet. And then these mini silkies. These are an additional 2-hole bead that I'll be using. I'm going to be using some of these mini daggers that came in the Czech glass bundle, and some fire polish beads from the Czech glass bundle too. These are 3mm beads. And I'm going to be using some 8, 11, and 15 seed beads. I'm going to be stringing this on beading wire. I'm using 0.014 beading wire. This is the softflex Extreme Flex. It is very, very supple and bendy. In fact, I've strung this and pulled it out a couple of times, and the wire is still perfectly fine. So it's a really good wire for doing sort of bead weavy things that don't require like multiple, like 5 or 6 passes through a bead, because you can just string it on wire and then crimp your stuff and not have to worry about reinforcing or anything like that. So I've pulled off about maybe 36-40 inches of wire, and I'm going to put 2 ends together on that end so that I can find the middle. I'm going to pick up 7 of the 15 seed beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because we're going to be making a little loop at one end of this that we can, like that, a little loop, so that we can put our closures on there. I'm going to be using a jump ring and some lobster clasp for that. I'm going to pick up one 11/0 and put it on both of these threads at once, just to bring the ends of that wire together down there near the end. There we go, like that. It's ready to go, and then I'm going to put a crimp on here. These are 2x2 crimps, and I'm not going to crimp it yet. I will wait until after I've done this whole bracelet to do my crimping, because I'm going to go with 2 threads up and then with 2 threads back for this design. Alright, so I've got my crimp here, and I'm going to put a 8/0 seed bead on both of these as well, just after the crimp. There we go. So I've got my little loop, and I've got that. Now I want to pick up 3 15/0 seed beads on each strand of this wire. 1, 2, 3. And that's for strand 1. Now on strand 2, we're going to be working with both of these strands at the same time. 1, 2, 3. Alright, and now I'm going to go through one of my pyramid beads. Now pyramid beads have a right side and a wrong side, so you want to make sure that you are going through consistently the same sides or directions, so that as you go through adding more of them, you don't end up with one pyramid bead poking out the other way. It's just a matter of consistency when your beads have one side that protrudes and one side that doesn't. We'll see that again with the silky beads in a minute when we get to that. So here we are. And I'm going to pick up an 11-0, a silky, and an 11-0 on each strand. But again, one of the ways that you can make sure when you've got these shaped beads that have a right side and a wrong side, you can make sure that you're being consistent by laying them out sort of in the way that you want it to go. So I'm going to put these in pairs next to each other because I'm going to be stringing them in pairs, one on one strand, one on the other. And I'm going to want to, where they're side by side like this, I'm going to want the inside hole for each of them. So I'm just going to set these up in a row before I pick up the other wire. I also double checked with each of my Czech glass 2-hole beads that both holes on the beads were clear. It's something to check before you start stringing, or as you string, you can sometimes just with your wire or your needle or something go through one hole and then go through the hole that you wanted to go. So it could be the second one. It's a good way to check it when you are not not sure, or if you didn't do it ahead of time. Alright, so I've got my 11 on here. Now I want to put a silky on each strand. And I want the bump on my silkies to also be facing the same way as the point on my pyramid beads. So on this I'm going to just go ahead and do one at a time. So if I go through this silky bead through that side, and then pick up another 11-0, that means that that silky bead will have its bump side facing up in the same direction as that one. And I can do the same thing with this wire. Oop. Go through in that direction. So when you've got bumps, you just want to make sure that you are paying attention to the way that they are facing. So these will be a little bit floppy until we go through and fill in some spaces between the second hole on each of these. But now I can go through my pyramid beads again, making sure that it will sit up in the right direction. And then do the same thing that I just did with 11-0s, the silky beads, and the 11-0s. It's two 11-0s at once, I only need one. I'm just going to be alternating these until it is the length that I want. I'm going to try and make sure that the little spaces between the silkies, that I have an odd number of those. If I have an even number, that's fine too. But I'm going to continue with that, and I'm going to want to make sure I end with a pyramid bead up. So I will add these to this length, and when it is at the length that I want to stop and turn around, I will come back here and we can do that together. Alright, so I have added 13 pyramid beads, and in between each of those I've got a pair of the silkies, and they are ready to go. I just need to get the wire turned around and a loop formed on this end so we can go back down and fill in these gaps on the sides of this bracelet. So what I'm going to do is get 3 11-0 seed beads on each strand of this wire. 1, 2, 3. And then one of the 8-0 seed beads. 1, 2, 3. And the 8/0 seed bead I'm going to go through with both wires in the same direction. So they are on there like that. That way it will mirror this end. Now I'm going to put my crimp on here, but I'm just like this one. I am not going to crimp it yet, not until I've finished putting all of the beads on this. Then we'll crimp both of those ends at the same time. But that doesn't mean that I can't put it on and get my wires where I want them to be beforehand. And now I need to make a little loop on this end that we can attach a jump ring to, and then part of a clasp. So I am going to pick up 5 15/0 seed beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, oh, 7, I mean 6, 7, not 5. Right? And now I've got these 5 15/0s over here. I'm going to take the second strand and I am going to just put this wire through all of those seed beads going in the opposite direction. So going down towards and probably into the crimp. I might need to move these along the wire a little bit to get better maneuverability for that second wire. I've got 6 of them on there. Let's get that 7th guy on there. There we go. And this is why you wouldn't be able to do this with like a thicker beading wire. Getting 2 passes through the 15/0s. Alright. I am going to put both of these wires through the crimp. That. The other one. And then we'll tighten them up after we get them through here. So it's still a loose loop with a scattering of seed beads over there. And now let's get the wire pulled through. 1 loop, 2 loops. Just tightening up that wire so that it brings that loop in. Once again, I will be crimping this after the rest of this. There we go. So now we need to get this wire from coming out over here. I want to pass it along the side here with some beads. So I'm going to pick up a 15/0, an 11/0, an 8/0, one of my fire polish beads, an 8/0, an 11/0, and a 15/0. And I'm just going to see if this will be enough beads to fill that gap. Well, it looks like I might need 2 more 8/0s, so pick up a second 8/0, and then I left the 15, 11, and 8 on that were already on there. Alright, and then my firepolish bead, 1, 2 8/0s, an 11/0, and a 15/0. Alright, that is perfect. That's going to give me a nice little frame on that side. To go through the second hole of the silky on this side. Let me do the same thing on the other side with a 15/0, an 11/0, 2 8/0s, a fire polish, 2 8/0s, 11/0, and a 15/0. There we go. It's like just going up several steps and then coming back down the other side. I'm just going to do that on both sides. Now you can fill in the gaps on one side of this bracelet and then come back and do the other, or you can do them sort of like one after another. So I'll do 2 over here and then 2 over here to kind of help keep it from getting too bendy in one direction versus the other. One side will balance out the other when you do this. So I'm going to I'm going to work on my top one real quick. I'm going to pick up a 15/0, an 8/0, fire polish, 8/0, and 15/0. I'm going to go through the second hole on the next silky in the line here. Like that. And let's go ahead and do the same thing on this one. 15/0, 8/0, fire polish, 8/0, and 15/0. And now for the really fun part, because we're going to be adding our little flower petals. I'm going to pick up a 15/0, 3 of my mini daggers. 1, 2, 3, a 15/0, and I'm going to go through the next silky in its second hole on that outer hole. And now with these, you could, if you wanted to, instead of having them be on the same sides like I'm going to, you could have one fan over here, one fan on the next one, and just kind of zigzag it. I think that would be a really fun way to do it. I'm choosing to do them on the same sections, so they're like across from the bracelet from each other. But alternating could be fun. Or if you had enough mini daggers, you could do all of the sections using them and not fill in stray gaps there. All right. So I'm just going to do one more with you of the, this is my restful one, where I've got my 15/0, 8/0, fire polish, 8/0, and 15/0. It gives your eyes a little bit of a rest between these bold yellow guys just popping out there, just being bright and sunshiny. So I did that one, and I'm going to go straight into this one. Like I said, I'm going to do 2 and then switch to the other side and do 2 more on that side, and just keep going all the way down to the end of the bracelet. So that's a 15/0, 3 daggers, and a 15/0. There we go. And then we'll do the same thing on this side. Let's zoom in a little bit so you can see these beads a little bit better. So 15-0, 8-0. Just move these a little bit out of the way because I don't think I am going to need them except for maybe 2 of them for the rest of this project. So I'm just going to move those out of the way. Oh, can't see what I've got on my thread. So 15-0, 8-0, fire polish, 8-0, 15-0, and then we go through that second hole in the silky. And coming out of that next one, I'm going to pick up a 15-0, 3 mini daggers. 1, 2, 3. Only one end on these mini daggers has a hole. The other end doesn't have one. Pro tip. And then a 15-0. So that they are stacked together like that. We'll go through the next silky. And now I'll do that again. So I'm going to continue working thusly all along, just pressing down on it while I pull on my wire just a little bit, just to tighten things up a little bit and get everybody situated nicely. Isn't this fun? I actually unironically love it so far. So let's get this finished up. I'm going to keep adding those all the way until I get to the end, and then I'll show you how to finish this off. Alright, so here we are. I have filled in all of those little spaces with these little bead repeats along the outside and my mini daggers, and I'm about ready to finish this up. I want to make this side match what I've got over here on the end, so I'm going to do the same kind of pattern on each of these strands. We'll pick up a 15-0, 2 8-0s. No, I'm sorry, there's an 11-0 in there. So an 11-0, and then 2 8-0s, then a fire polish bead, 2 8-0s, a 15-0, sorry, an 11-0, I keep forgetting about the 11-0s, and a 15-0. There we go. So this should take me from my silky up to my crimp up here near the end. Now this might be a little bit tricky because I'm going to try and get my wire in here between this 8-0 and the crimp. I just want it to go through the crimp. I don't want it to go through any of those. I don't want it to go through that 11-0 that's next to, well, I guess it could go through that 1 11-0. That'll be fine. It'll be fine. There we go. So that's the one side. Now let's do the same thing on the other. I'm just going to tighten up that side real quick. Tighten up my other side. Need to lay this down flat. This is one of the reasons that I did not go ahead and crimp it, is because there needs to necessarily be a little bit of smoothing out of this design, because you don't want it too tight, but you don't want it too super loose either. There we go. Alright, that's good there. Now let's get this bead pattern on here on this last piece of wire, where I have a 15-0, an 11-0, 2 8-0s, my fire polish bead, 2 8-0s, one more 11-0, and a 15-0. And I'm going to try and get that into this crimp as well. Let's get this coming in on that side. Oh, all the way through. All the way through. There we go. That's too much. Okay. Just smoothing out my bracelet. Alright, I'm going to crimp this end first. I'm just going to make sure that there's a little bit of wiggle room between these beads that are next to my crimp and my crimp. Just using my fingernail to use a little bit, to increase a little bit of space so that when I put my crimper on here, I can center it and not crush any of these teeny tiny 15-0 seed beads in the jaws. Just moving them out of the way. Trying to anyway. The little seed beads are the hardest to move. There we go. Aha. Oop. Looks like I went ahead and crushed one anyway. That's okay. As long as I can crimp my crimp. It's just the little bead next to the crimp that's all that got crushed. It shouldn't impact the rest of the bracelet. Alright, so now I've got my little loop. I've got that over there. It's like an Easter basket. That's what it feels like to me. These pastels, the purple, the yellow, the greens. It feels like Easter to me. Little duckling feathers or something like that. Alright, so between that bead and this one, let's go. I'm just doing a magical crimping. If you would like to learn more about how to do a magical crimper, I did a really quick video. It's just a 10-minute, this is how you do it, tips and tricks. I'll link that in the description below so that you can get caught up on that, because I did not spend a lot of time talking about the magical crimper during this tutorial, because I was a little bit more worried about not crushing my, my seed beads. So now I've got some excess wire here that I'm going to snip off with my wire cutters. It's a little bit fiddly, but it should be lots of fun to wear that. Let's get some closures attached. I've got chain nose pliers to open and close my jump rings. I'm going to use my pliers just to hold the other side of the jump ring while I swing it open and closed. Alright, so that one's going to be here with a, hold on, yep, okay. I always test lobster clasps before I use them. I forgot to test that one before we started making, so this was a good time to do it. I've got my lobster clasp on one end, and then I'll have this one on the other. And I will lay it out for one last look. This is just a closed ring that I'm attaching to this end. Should make it easier to attach rather than using a small jump ring. Just using a sort of larger loop like that. Let's get this guy spread out a little bit. So you can get a good look at him. Or her. I don't know. It. Yes, it. I don't know. I am always personifying things. It's just one of the things I do. Alright, so there we have it. Our little Easter basket bracelet. I don't think I'm going to call it that, although it's feeling like it to me. But I will definitely put a link in the description below to Beads to Live By. When there are extras of any of the beads from the bead subscriptions, they're available to purchase there. And you can sign up this week for the new subscription period. It's signed up, you pay for 3 months at a time, and then you get monthly shipments. It is one of my favorite bead subscriptions. It's a lot of fun. I've learned a lot just from playing around with these tool beads and learning how to make things with them. So I hope you enjoyed this, and until next time, happy beading.